Hi guys, my name is Spencer, this is Sphinx Reads, and today I will be reviewing my first ever Cosmere novel, Elantris. Or, as the official Brandon Sanderson website says, it's pronounced Elantris, which I don't agree with. So this is my first Cosmere novel. I'm actually reading this as part of the Cosmere Crab-along that's going on in Books Before Death's channel. I'll have the channel linked in the description below, as well as the announcement video that they did. I'll also have the Discord associated with that read-along linked below. Please join us. It's super fun. We have such a nice community of people who are new to the Cosmere and those who aren't so new. This is a read-along that's going on in 2021. If you're watching this after 2021, I hope that the Discord will still be going on, and so feel free to join us and just chat with us about everything Cosmere. But getting right into the review. So I had absolutely no idea what this story was about going into this. I've just been interested in reading the Cosmere for the longest time, and a lot of people, friends and booktubers alike, recommended Elantris as the starting point for getting into the Cosmere. That was pretty much all I knew. I didn't know anything about the story. I did know that this is a high fantasy, so I was expecting it to, have just like a really complicated world and characters and religions and politics and things like that. But in this story, we follow three main POVs. One is a prince who became a sort of zombie leper called an Elantrian. He's thrown into this prison city called Elantris. Basically, Elantris is a super powerful city. It's like the city of the gods, but it fell after an event called the Sheod, which made all of the Elantrians pretty much living zombies. Basically, whatever pain they feel or is inflicted on them, it does not go away. And so the more you stub your toe or like hit your head or feel hunger, that pain just lasts and just doesn't go away. So this prince named Raoden, he is infected by the Sheod, or the Sheod comes upon him and he becomes an Elantrian, and so he is banished from his kingdom called Raylon, as Brandon Sanderson's website says, into the neighboring city of Elantris. We also follow a princess called Serene, or Serene, or Serene, from a foreign country called Teod, who, at the beginning of the story, she is just arriving in Aralon, in fact, to actually marry Raoden, who is her betrothed husband. When she gets there, she thinks that Raoden has died, and the law of this country, place, city, kingdom, whatever, says that if you are betrothed to someone and that person dies, you are immediately married to them after that person dies. So you pretty much can't marry anyone else. And the third POV that we follow is a priest. He is a Derethi priest who is also arriving at Aralon at the same time as the princess in order to convert the entire kingdom to his religion, Derethi, because the kingdom belongs to kind of a twin religion, sort of different, called Korathi. I'm not sure if I'm saying these names correct, and Cosmere fans will probably be correcting me if I mix any of these religions up, but I'm just trying to keep this simple because this is a very well fleshed out story with a lot of names and characters, religions, politics, everything. But basically, this priest called Harathan, he wants to convert this entire city at all costs. He would do anything to convert this entire kingdom to his god called Jedith. Unexpectedly, the beginning of this book actually had kind of a strong start. The story was really engaging. The characters that we follow were really interesting, and like their motivations were kind of just really interesting to follow. I haven't read a lot of high fantasy before this, pretty much just The Name of the Wind and middle grade fantasy. And so I did meet some hurdles that I think those who are new to adult fantasy might find as well, but maybe easier for those who are more well versed in adult fantasy. The writing is very accessible. There aren't a lot of like fancy words that Brandon Sanderson uses all throughout the story. It's pretty easy to understand what's going on. Just as far as the writing goes though, because this world has a vocabulary and there are just a lot of place names and character names and just title names, just everything. There are a lot of named things in this story that are kind of hard to follow, and the vocabulary does take some getting used to. I think I only got used to it about like halfway through the book. I think most of the character and place names that are mentioned in this book didn't really have a significant part to play, so it was kind of useless for me. I mean, Cosmere fans will probably argue that these names actually matter later on the Cosmere, I don't know. But for me, just in terms of this book alone, this story, a lot of it was kind of unnecessary for me. In the first half of the book, there's also a lot of info dumping that happens that I just kind of gave up. Like halfway through the book, I gave up trying to keep everything straight, and I enjoyed it more as a result. Some of the people who read this book this month as part of the read-along actually said that they started taking notes for this book to keep track of the characters and the names. So if you're like me who doesn't really like to take notes for the book and you're just in it for the ride and the story, this might not be the book for you. If you're willing to just kind of let it go over your head, just endure it until you get towards the second half of the story, which is actually better, then you might give this book a chance. So you know how in writing there's always this advice that goes around like show, don't tell? This book is a lot of show, don't tell, which is really like objectively good, but also to some extent I wish there was just a little bit more telling, because even though we see a lot of the characters' words, this is a very dialogue heavy book, by the way. We hear a lot of the characters' words and we see a lot of their actions, obviously. We don't really get a lot of their feelings. They're really interesting, like the things that they do, the things that they think, but the things that they feel, you don't really get a lot of those emotions, just in my opinion. So people can argue. This is a perfect example of a slow burn book. Like, until about 70% of the book, the pacing is really slow. The plot reveals itself like layer upon layer. And so if you're not about slow burn stories, this is definitely not for you unless you're willing to endure until the 70% mark and get a lot of the action scenes that go on after that. This might not be for you. That said, the last about 30% of the book is very action-packed. Like, there were a lot of things that were just going on and they came right one after the other. I can't speak. And that's another thing. If you don't like sudden shifts in like the pacing of the story, if you like your slow burn to be slow burn all throughout, or if you want like fast pace all throughout, then this might not be for you, because it's really slow the first 70% and then the last 30% is really just like boom, boom, boom. So on Goodreads, I was debating whether to give this book 3 stars or 4 stars, because in terms of enjoyment, I did enjoy this book. I love the story. It was interesting, and the characters were just really interesting. And there were a few scenes that made me, feel things, because we read to feel things, right? But in terms of overall enjoyment, this was kind of a 3. Like, I couldn't have cared less if at any point of this story, really, if I just read what happens in the rest of the story from a Wikipedia article or something. Like, I just wasn't that invested, to actually read the book. I just want to know what happens. Like, let's just get this over with, sort of a thing. In terms of the quality, especially for a debut novel, this is Sanderson's first published work. This is a 4. This is about maybe a little higher, about the same tier, maybe a little higher in relation to Aragon. Like, that book wasn't really for me, but the overall feel is similar. Like, there's a lot of info dumps and the pacing is really slow. So in terms of like seeing the quality and just how much thought the author put into this story, like you can see it on the page, this is definitely a 4. By the way, I'm only half joking about just reading a Wikipedia summary instead of reading the book. Obviously, if you want to delve into the Cosmere, you do want to read the actual book, or at least read a really in-depth summary of it, which I don't think is really possible unless you actually just do it, just read the book to catch those connections. I have heard that there aren't really a lot of connections. There are a few, but not a lot. Elantris is actually one of the least favorite Cosmere books out there. I've actually noticed that a lot of fans have read Stormlight, they've read Mistborn, and they've read Warbreaker, but Elantris was just kind of in the back burner. And once they read it, they're like, oh, okay, now I'm done with the Cosmere, but it didn't really make much of a difference for them. While this is a really good debut novel, for Sanderson, I'll give him that. I would not recommend this as an introduction to high fantasy. I'm pretty new, so I don't have a lot of recommendations other than The Name of the Wind, which I think is a pretty good introduction. But this book, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who is trying to delve into adult high fantasy. I also wouldn't recommend it as an introduction to Brandon Sanderson. There's other better books or more popular books out there that you could check out by Brandon Sanderson. Definitely not this one. Even though this was most recommended to me as the best book to start within the Cosmere, I'm kind of glad that this isn't my first Brandon Sanderson book, because if this was my introduction to Brandon Sanderson and the Cosmere, I probably would have been really turned off. Like, this is just too much for me, just too much info dumping, and so I would not recommend this as an introduction to the Cosmere. So far, I've only read this one. I am planning, as I read more books in the Cosmere, to, at the end of my reviews, give you kind of an updated, like, which one should you read first, sort of like a Cosmere reading order. Like, a lot of people seem to be doing that, but I want to build my own sort of reading order, and I want you guys to kind of see how my opinions change and how that order kind of changes with each book that I read. I guess the biggest merits in this book are the really important political themes in this. There's a lot of discussions that could be had about social classes and discrimination and the role of religion and like the government. So if you're looking for a story with like a lot of political intrigue, which this book has a lot of, then this book is perfect for you. And that is it for my review of Elantris, however you want to say it. Let me know what your thoughts are on this book in the comments below, or if you haven't read it, what do you think? Do you think you're going to pick it up? Do you think you're just going to like never read it and read other Cosmere or read other Brandon Sanderson? Let me know in the comments. If you want to discuss spoilers, just hop onto our Crabbalong Discord and we'll chat there. Even if you are watching this after 2021, I'm hoping that the Discord will still be up. So just try it on the link, and if it doesn't work, just comment and maybe I'll send you a link if it still exists. So that is it for my review of Elantris. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and please forget to subscribe so you can do it later, and have a good day.